We'll try to respond to them if time allows it. All right, I will now introduce to you our wonderful panelists. Our first speaker is Kate Edwards. Kate is the Executive Director of the Global Game Jam, as well as the CEO and Principal Consultant of Geogrify, a consultancy which pioneered content culturalization. She is also a board member of Take This and is the former Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association. In addition to being an award-winning advocate who serves in several advisory roles, she is a geographer, writer, and corporate strategist. Following 13 years at Microsoft, she has consulted on many games and non-game projects for BioWare, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Lego, and many other companies. Fortune magazine named her as one of the 10 most powerful women in the game industry in 2013, and in 2014 was named as GameIndustry.biz as one of their 6 people of the year. Besides being awarded by several events for her advocacy work in the global game industry, she was most recently honored with the Ambassador Award at the Game Developers Choice Awards at GDC 2020. She is also profiled in the December 2018 publication, Women in Gaming, 100 Professionals of Play. Welcome, Kate, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Our second speaker is Poornima Seetharaman. Poornima has been part of the gaming industry since 2006 and has worked with some of the best names in the Indian gaming industry, including India Games, Jumpstart, GSN Games, Square Enix, etc. She chose game design as her career completely out of her passion for games and translated that passion further by co-founding Pinaka Interactive, a game design studio, and Namalore Entertainment, a game development studio. Poornima believes in using the power of gaming to create a meaningful and impactful change in thinking. She is currently part of the Zynga family as their lead game designer. She is also a Woman in Games ambassador, a speaker, and part of the content team for the India Game Developer Conference. Additionally, Poornima is a visiting faculty, project consultant, and curriculum committee member at the National Institute of Design and conducts workshops for other reputed institutes. She has worked across a wide variety of genres, including casual games, free-to-play games, FPS, RPG, MMO, social casino, and augmented reality. She has curated, judged, and spoken at various design festivals and conferences, and is also one of the mentors of Google's Indie Game Accelerator in India. Lastly, she has been inducted into the Women in Games Global Hall of Fame in 2020, making her the first Indian game designer to receive such an honor. Poornima, it is great to have you today. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Our last panelist is Amita Tomkoria. Amita is a strategic finance leader who thrives in an entrepreneurial environment. In the past 14 years, she has been leading global P&Ls across the media and entertainment, software, e-commerce, and energy industries with expertise in building best-in-class FP&A processes to drive financial results. She also has experience leading global teams and passion about recruiting and developing top talent. Thanks for speaking today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'd also like to introduce our hosts, Debbie Menin and Sumit Grover. Debbie is the VP of Tech Mahindra running the media and entertainment business. Formerly, she was the EVP of the Advanced Imaging Society, which is the entertainment industry organization that represents emerging technologies for content creation. During that time, she helped run a Women in Tech Award ceremony honoring 13 distinguished women in entertainment. She is an entertainment and media professional with a background focusing on running entertainment strategies, ad tech, martech solutions, and advertising sales management positions. Debbie has also held high-level positions at companies such as Nexstar, Media General, Yahoo, MTV Networks, Condé Nast, and Variety. Our other host, Sumit, is responsible for the growth of Tech Mahindra's cable, media, and entertainment business in Americas. In addition, Sumit is also responsible for few top strategic global accounts growth as a special charter for the company. After a successful stint of jumpstarting CME business in Japan, for which he was based in Tokyo, Sumit has relocated back to the US and currently lives with his family in Jersey. Alrighty, New Jersey, for people who don't know. Alrighty, that's everyone. Sumit, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Astrid, my fellow New Jersey friend, for such great warm welcome and introductions as always. You're doing a great job. Good day, everyone. Hope you and all yours at home and work are safe and healthy. I'm Sumit, your host for the day, and it gives me an immense pleasure to host such a special panel today on our show. I'm truly excited to have Poornima, Kate, and Amita, who've made their mark in an industry who all of us are crazy about, the gaming and esports world. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Where 1 in every 3 employees is a woman, and where we take pride in programs like Starting Over, encouraging women who have taken a break in their career, the inspiring women have always been just around the corner for us at Tech Mahindra. No wonder we are rated as one of the top best workplaces for women by the Great Place to Work Institute. I feel privileged to welcome all of you to this episode of our series, directed and produced by our most exciting business at TechEd, the cable, media, and entertainment business, where we offer experience, technology, and engineering solutions from glass to glass through innovative people, products, platforms, and of course, possibilities. I promise this was the last piece of commercial advertisement in this event today. All right, friends, did you know women make up almost half, that is 46% of all gamers out there? Gaming is no longer a niche arena for a certain age group or consumer segment. This industry has become a viable form of entertainment for sports enthusiasts and anybody from all backgrounds and ages. These 3 incredible, powerful women with us have broken stereotypes and successfully proven that women can rise up and above in any field they choose to excel in. These are real-life wonder women and role models for innumerable girls who want to play big. Tech Mahindra salutes these heroes. One last thing. A huge shout out to Ashwini, Chaube, and Aishwarya for putting this special episode together. As they say in the world of gaming, GG girls, good game. I'm learning. Given the powerful cast that we have today on this panel, Ashwini reminded us of these beautiful lines that I would like to share with you all from a poem named Girl on Fire by Janet LeBlanc. She knows the lotus blooms in mud. She knows the phoenix goes down in flames. She knows the scent of the paradox is where the truth is found. She's full of sky, full of starshine, full of goddess flame. She's a girl on fire. She's stoking the flames. She's lighting the world. She's burning to ashes. And always she is rising and rising and rising again. Here's to the women who forged a path, mentored others, and created a voice for those who didn't have a platform. Let's kick it off with none other than our very own Debbie Menin.
Thank you, Sumit. I love that. Girl on fire rising. Perfect. Let's talk a bit about special powers. Given that the world of gaming can go into, you know this, the make-believe, let's ask a question for the audience and something for you to think about. If you were to choose a superhero power, what would it be? It would also be great to think about what your special powers are. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start off with Poornima. I read that you believe in using the power of gaming to create a, listen to this, meaningful and impactful change in thinking. Is that your superpower? And can you tell us what you mean here and perhaps give us an example?
Sure thing. Thanks, Debbie. So I would say my special power would be empathy. And I guess that's the reason I believe gaming can help more than just being pure entertainment. So it's like when you watch a movie, you're looking at an actor playing a character, versus when you play a game, you become the character. So you feel empathy in a more personal way. You start relating to your character, their problems. You start understanding, you want to solve their problems. You are, invested in their story. And today we actually have some great games like Hellblade that deals with psychosis, Gris that takes on a journey of overcoming grief, Celis that talks about depression, We have That Dragon Cancer and Last Day of June that talks about losing a loved one. I feel like when you empathize, you put yourself in their shoes. You start standing up for them. You start having a voice. Today, I can be here, make a game about my problems that may be specific to me, but through games, you can actually feel what I'm going through and you can empathize with it. We all have our own sense of morality, our belief system. But I think in a game, when we think from someone else's perspective, we challenge what we know, what we are led to believe. And because we see the consequences of the decisions that we make. And I think that's why games are such wonderful, powerful mediums to create that sort of meaningful and impactful change.
Thank you. Love the answer. Let's talk to Kate. When we spoke, you mentioned that your superpower is a cultural change catalyst. What does that mean?
Well, I think
that inspired you to start consulting and doing your own firm around content culturalization and strategy.
it is. So basically what that means, looking back on my career, which has been in the game industry for almost 28 years and just working professionally about 30 years now. And at one point, a few years ago, I was challenged by a colleague of mine, who's somewhat of a mentor, to basically help, they like try to understand, what do you actually do? Because they're like, I know you do all kinds of stuff, but what do you actually do? And it gave me a chance to reflect on my background and all the things I've done over my career. And what I came up with was that phrase, cultural change catalyst. What I mean by that is that oftentimes in hindsight, not necessarily consciously in the moment, but in hindsight, what I'm doing is basically finding a problem that nobody else seems to want to touch and trying to change it or trying to fix it or trying to somehow, make change happen around that issue. And a lot of times that does involve a certain amount of cultural change. It could either be the culture that's inside a product, because every single product that we create, no matter where it's created, carries culture with it. It carries our biases. It carries our aspirations. It carries basically a piece of who we are. It doesn't matter if it's a game or a film or even a piece of software, that content carries culture. And so I changed the culture within products by making sure they're adaptable to other cultures around the world. I changed processes in companies like I did at Microsoft and Google and other companies, where we saw things that should be done, or they were just not taking account for them. A lot of it around these cultural issues. And then in my later years, and a lot of the advocacy work I've done in the game industry is actually trying to change the culture of the industry, to make it more inclusive, to make it less, impactful on people's work-life balance with crunch time and things like that. And so looking back, that's essentially kind of the core of what I do. I like to fix problems, and I'm not shy from trying.
Okay, I think I understand it better now, but I think before we're done, I'll really understand it. I don't think I'd be doing Kate justice without talking about her other superpower. Okay, you believe this? She does not get jet lag. I'm so jealous. But let's take that as an opportunity to talk about the non-jet lag superpowers that she has with her career, because as you just heard, she's thought a lot about other cultures, other countries. She's well-traveled. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that has helped shape your career.
Oh, absolutely. Well, part of it is just the fact that I'm a geographer. So that is my background, and I am a professional geographer. A lot of people don't even know that in the game industry, at least on the game industry side, they don't. They just think I'm this person, this loudmouth who talks about all these serious issues in the industry. But that foundation as a geographer gives me, I have an intense interest in other cultures and in travel and maps, of course, and all these other things. But, the American writer Mark Twain, he once wrote that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And I love that quote, because I really feel that is so true. And the more you travel, the more you expose yourself to other cultures and other locations and really get to understand the people there, you do understand that we're all pretty much human beings. Yes, we have different cultural backgrounds and upbringings and all that kind of thing, but the base motivations that we have, the emotions that we have, the desires that we have are all pretty much the same. And, we have to try as much as we can to strip away the political stuff and all these other stuff that gets layered on top of it in our different locales around the world, and look at people as who they are, which is basically you're looking in the mirror, because we all kind of have that baseline human desire to be successful, to do something that's fun, and to help, positively affect others around us.
Love it. All right, Amita, you mentioned your superpower is listening. Okay. How important is that? I think it's something no one does enough. So this philosophy seems to work naturally for you. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate a bit and tell us why you think it's been helpful in your career.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Debbie. I don't know if it's a superpower, but I am naturally introverted. I mean, I was like painfully shy as a kid. I've come a long way, I'm happy to say, but I think for me, it helps, particularly in business. And I think in American business culture, where it's really valued that you speak up, ask a lot of questions. That's sort of how you're taught, how you're trained. For me, it's helpful to remind myself that listening has a lot of value as well. And, it's not always necessary to sort of compete with folks to have your voice heard or to speak for the sake of speaking, but there's a lot of power that can come from listening as well. And so I just find that to be a helpful reminder for me, rather than, getting stressed out about, when am I going to speak up? How am I going to speak up? I like to be really purposeful when I speak. And I remember a few years ago in my career, actually, a business leader that I worked pretty closely with gave me some feedback and said, when you speak, people really listen. And I think that's because you are not looking to chime in at every turn. And, as someone who stresses out about that very often, it was sort of very comforting to know that, there's power in, choosing your moments as well. I think for me, it's something that I've worked really hard on throughout my career, knowing that, it doesn't come naturally to me. I think, part of that is just cultural too, like growing up in an Indian family. I know a lot of people can relate to this, just, culturally, it's very different than sort of what's expected of you in American business culture. You're taught to sort of keep quiet and, don't ask a lot of questions and, respect the people that are more senior to you. And they know, they'll always know more than you. And so it takes a bit of extra practice to kind of break out of that and what you're used to, and kind of grow confidence along the way to know that, you can speak up, you do have a voice and it's valuable. So, I try to balance the two, and that seems to be working all right for me. Still a lot of practice involved, but going okay so far.
Thank you. I think we'll learn more as we get into this with some other examples that she'll be sharing. So I think that was really helpful. Let's move on to the next subject, which is about mantras. All right, the word mantra is derived from two Sanskrit words, which is a sacred Hindu language. Manas means mind, and tra means tool. So mantra actually means a tool for the mind. So let's kick it off with Kate and find out what's on her mind. Okay, for her, it's all about injustice. So do you have a mantra that you can share?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. My mantra tends to be evil triumphs when good people do nothing. And this is something that we've all heard that phrase before in some context or another, but it was a few years ago, I don't know, maybe more than a few, about maybe a decade ago, when I really thought about that phrase and embraced it, and embraced it for what it really means, which is essentially that inaction is not, for me, inaction is not an option. And from that point forward, inaction just will not be something that I will entertain. So that can get somebody in trouble because you tend to dive into problems and dive into things that you want to fix so desperately. Sometimes you get in over your head. Sometimes you do it a bit impulsively without thinking about, okay, maybe I should have thought about not think about not acting, but about how you're going to act. How are you actually going to address the problem? And I've learned my lessons early on, but at this point, I feel that that really is something I embrace every single day. It's like if somebody comes to me with an issue, I will try and help them, especially if they have nowhere else to turn. I mean, it even as simple as like if I see somebody having problem on the street or they're being robbed or something, I will step in. I will say something. I'm not trying to be a superhero. I'm just saying that the more that we as people in our societies that we live in, when we don't act and we just kind of turn our cheek to a problem that we see, that's why the problems persist. And we see this in the game industry when the issues of diversity and inclusion, these are not secrets. They're not new. These have been issues in the game industry ever since its inception decades ago. And the only reason that they tend not to be addressed as aggressively as they should be is because people are not just grasping it and trying to solve the problem. And fortunately, that has been changing, I think, over the last several years. There's been far more awareness in the industry and I think in society in general, which is great. And it's kind of helping to drive that. But nonetheless, even with that awareness growing, it still ultimately comes down to every act that an individual makes. Because if you look at the scope of human history, every major movement that happened in history, whether political, religious, or anything else, usually happened with one person who decided to stand up and do something. And I don't think that's any different today.
Agreed. Let's think about sound bites today. When you're hearing somebody say something, we should even write them down. Okay, the one I just got was inaction is not an option. And I think it's profound. Thank you for your answer. Poornima, do you have a mantra that you live by, or let's just call it a purpose that you actually have defined and committed to? Can you also tell us if you identify with your inner intuition? That's something I picked up when I was talking to you. And does that help drive you?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's very simple now that going with what feels right is basically my mantra, is essentially tied to my intuition. And I'm a person who often overthinks every aspect of my life. And I've often seen that, whenever my intuition is pointing to something that has been more spot on than anything my logic or my brain is coming up with. And the times I have been reasonable or practical and overlooked my intuition, and most of the time the things have gone wrong there. So, and I felt that with intuition, I feel strongly towards something. I'm a very emotional person. Even when projects I've worked with, I'm very invested. So I think it's a very personal thing for me. So I feel very strongly about it. What it also does is it gives me the sense of courage. It allows me to, conquer uncharted territories. Like I find this courage that I probably didn't have because I'm so invested. So my intuition drives me towards that. Even to new peaks, new goals, and territories that I'm unaware of, uncomfortable or scary. I feel like I can take on that challenge and I can go further and I can achieve it. So yes, I think going by what feels right is my mantra.
It's a tool for the mind, right? I do think it drives everything you've done that you've told me in your career, which we'll hear a little bit more about. Speaking of your career, let's talk about a career in gaming. Okay, so we know this is a highly, highly competitive area with about 20% women so far, but the people that are on this panel here have really broken down barriers. And if one of you said this to me, there doesn't have to be roadblocks. And if you just get that into your mindset, you can literally do anything. I'm going to start with Amita here. You are relatively new in gaming. Okay, so you've had a career in finance. You were most recently at Deluxe. You made a shift, and I'm just wondering if this switch did you have a goal for this switch? I'm just also curious, are you happy with the results, and are you happy to be in the gaming industry now?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, just looking back on my career, up to this point, I've really enjoyed being in finance, specifically because it has allowed me to move through a lot of different industries. I have been in other very male-dominated industries. Oil and gas was quite an interesting experience during my, part of my time at GE. Very much male-dominated, so I was often the only woman in the room. With the most recent switch I made, I mean, I was previously at a media company called Deluxe Entertainment, more on the sort of linear film and TV side of media. And what was really exciting about gaming for me was, the interactive side of entertainment was still, a little bit not as mature of a space in terms of business coverage, how mainstream it was, still growing really rapidly, a lot of tailwinds in the industry, really, really exciting, and stood in stark contrast to, my experience in linear media, where the company at least that I was working for was sort of, navigating through some pretty significant business model changes, just given how drastically the media landscape has changed. And so it was a very challenging environment. And I was excited to sort of jump to the other side of the media and entertainment space, into a much more nascent, part of the sector. And, for me, I had spent most of my career in kind of more traditional finance roles, and this was an opportunity not only to see a different aspect of the entertainment space, but to actually broaden my skill set in finance. I mean, investor relations is not something that I've done before, but it's been incredible over the last year plus to experience that and learn, specifically within the gaming sector, just given how rapidly it's evolved, and especially kind of everything that's unfolded this year. And so, for me, my hope is, to get back to my passion of, more traditional finance roles, but with the hope that, I can now bring something more, in the future, and that I'll have more to offer as a result of this experience. So far it's going well. I think, kind of back to what I was saying before, I spend most of my time in front of large institutional investors talking about the company. And so, it's been a great way to kind of push the envelope and push me out of my comfort zone. And so we'll sort of see what the industry and the space has in store for us over the next few months and years. But I've been really happy.
Good. I think Amita's example is really good for anybody right now. There's a lot of industry flux, and a lot of people are thinking about, what is my skill set and how do I use this skill set now in a different industry? So she went from GE to Deluxe to, where you are today at Activision. I think it is such an inspiration, and those transitions are not easy. And I give you a lot of credit for doing it. And I think it's great because you can learn a whole new industry that Poornima and Kate have been in for many, many years. So, well, good for you. I'm going to talk about the world united in 2020 with COVID for gaming. So if you think about the idea that there's silver linings that have come out this year with gaming, that has definitely been on the rise. Poornima, I was wondering if you could talk about, are there any industry trends that people should be looking out for? And if you thought about the coming years ahead of us, what do you see that could be taking off in the gaming industry?
So I think the silver lining for this pandemic is that we are united virtually, right? Like, even this webinar is happening for me to be here, which is very interesting because Age of Empires and Warcraft 3 were the two games that basically got me hooked into gaming. And Kate here has been part of everything Age of Empires. And Amita is part of Blizzard, which is the creators of Warcraft. And it's wonderful to be connected this way. And this, if I think when I started, I wouldn't have even imagined this happening. And usually our, interactions are limited to some conferences for which we may have to travel, and sometimes we don't. But with this kind of setup, it has become so much easier for information, for sharing. Everything is coming together. People are getting used to this. People are adopting technology. And the moment you start adopting technology, I think gaming just becomes a huge component of it. What happens especially is, like, even if we in a physical setup, we are talking about, hey, let's come over for a game night. We have all played something or the other. We played Pictionary or, spin the bottle, anything. We have played some form of game in our lifetime. So in this setup, when we are all scattered and, the connection is all technological, I think games have become this wonderful medium to connect. So social interaction games, we have multiplayer, these party games have picked up. Among Us being a huge example. The game was released 2 years ago, but it has picked up and it's trending right now because this pandemic kind of breathed new life for that game. People love it People want to play it. It has suddenly become an area where you come together with family and friends and play together. Because this pandemic has also given you, like, you're locked down, you're sitting inside, there's so much restriction going on. You feel lonely. There's a lot of mental health that we need to talk about. And games are usually they give this dopamine release that I say using positive feedback loops. I think when you play games, you get that feeling. You feel happy, you don't feel lonely, you connect with people who are similar to you. So I think this whole trend of social interaction-based games are going to be here for long.
Games give dopamine, which is a positive impact. Well said. One-liner. Thank you. Kate, would you recommend a career in gaming today for women?
Absolutely, because we need more women in this industry. When we have, as was mentioned earlier, when we have gender parity in the people who are playing the games, it would be great to have gender parity on, on the side of the people who are making the games. Because as we're creating more games and as games are becoming more of a ubiquitous form of entertainment around the world, we want games that are going to appeal to everybody. And I think we've seen a very positive trend in that direction for the last, 5 to 10 years in the industry. Even though I know the media likes to sometimes highlight some of the typical games that get, focus, like Call of Duty, shooting games, Grand Theft Auto, things like that get a lot of attention. But in the course of history of games, those aren't the games that have made the most money by far. Those aren't the games that have the most players either. You're looking at games like Super Mario and Tetris and things like that, which tends to be much more appealing. They're much more family oriented. They're much basically open to anybody. And so I think the more that becomes the case, the more and more we need people who represent all kinds of different backgrounds. Certainly from a gender perspective, without question, but also other underrepresented groups who should be in the industry as well. Because it's not just about the gender diversity, which is a very important part, but it's also about the racial diversity and cultural diversity. And again, I think we're seeing that more and more, especially as game development has become more democratized because the tools are out there, they're free or they're very cheap. A lot of the education is up on YouTube and elsewhere. And so one of the amazing things to see, like at least when I was traveling a lot, I visit a lot of emerging markets around the world, and just seeing the tremendous amount of games and creativity being used in games as a form of artistic self-expression is super encouraging. So I think we've seen improvements over the last decade or so. I think we're going to see quite a shift over the next 10 to 20 years.
Oh, that's great. Good to hear. All right, more women in gaming. Let's make it happen.
We need you.
Yes, we need you. All right, Poornima. First of all, when we did the bios, we read the awards that Poornima and that Kate have won. So what I really want to do is find out, is that something that drives you? So Poornima, we heard that she was one of the first Indian game designer developers to be inducted into the Global Women in Games Hall of Fame. Okay, so that's quite remarkable. And I really want to know, when you heard you're winning this, how did it make you feel? Now, also, if you wouldn't mind just giving advice too, if there's anyone else out there that wants to follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely. I think when it got announced, I didn't know what to feel. I wasn't sure. And plus it was a virtual event, so I think it is still not sunk in some ways. And but genuinely, the love that I've got by winning that award, and that feels amazing from across the globe. And it's for me, I think bringing that kind of honor to India, that's like an additional bonus that comes with it, which is not something I expected, or not something that my whole thing was putting myself out there. I know, we have this veteran game designer, Ernest Adams, and I used to talk to him, and he always said that, you need to put yourself out there. And that's, for me, is always stepping outside the comfort zone. I always thought but I'm doing it. Someone will be noticing it and giving me that recognition. But then he was like, but they don't know you exist. You need to put yourself out there and tell that you are here. You need to have that voice. Only then they will take notice. And I think after so many years when this happened and this time they opened it for across the globe, this award ceremony, I said, okay, I'm just going to put myself out there. I was not expecting anything to come out of it. For me, that was just a first step in the right direction of just doing this. So the results is just great validation and recognition. And I think somewhere it is, credible for me where, I've been determined working in the Indian gaming industry, and pushing it forward as much as I could against all odds. And I'm continuing to fight the good fight. So I feel like this award comes like that kind of a sword that I could carry and, continue to fight. So those who are following my footstep, I think I would say, don't give up. What I've also noticed is sometimes my win, whether it works out for me or not, it sometimes inspires someone else to take that place. I feel like I have seen people like Kate and Brenda, and they inspire me so much. Like now I know Kate, but before, when Kate was not aware of my existence, I used to still look up to her and be inspired about how amazing this woman is. And so you don't even know who you are impacting. And sometimes I get that kind of feedback and I realize it's not about me. So I think at the end, hard work and perseverance always pays off. To sum it up, it's step out of your comfort zone, and sometimes you standing up is actually helping someone else.
Interesting. So see how you looked up to Kate, and now think about all the women that are looking up to you, and then think of yourself as an inspiration to them, and that you can actually make a difference to them without even knowing you're doing it. That's tremendous. Well, as I mentioned, Kate also had quite a few accolades and awards, just to name a few. 10 most powerful women in the gaming industry. That's not bad. I like this one. Also made the 50 over 50 list in 2018. Okay, so this surely helped as a response to the reality that ageism is a rampant problem in the game industry and other tech sectors. But if that's not enough, Kate also was won the Ambassador Award. Let's see what else she's done. For her work with the IGDA and current work for the Global Game Jam. So a couple of things. One is, this is impressive, but you know what? It's also a little intimidating. So a couple questions here. If others are watching, what would you recommend that they do to rise up to this challenge? What would you recommend to them? But also, what I want to point out is this. I don't believe that you're doing this for the recognition. I believe that you have a journey and a purpose. And it sounds like these honors are not what drives you. And yes, that's true. So I'm going to let you go ahead and answer this.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, all the accolades and awards and honors they're really nice. It is a form of validation for all the hard work that you do, but it's the last thing in my mind. Honestly, it's just like I do what I do because I want change to happen. I really do. I really believe it. It's part of my DNA. I want to change things. I want things to be better for people. I want them to have a more optimistic perspective on their career, on their industry. And if people recognize that, and if they see that effort is award worthy, that's great. I do appreciate it. I'm very humbled by it, but that's never why I do it. And so, and I think to your point about, people being potentially intimidated, which I get that now, because I do have people are like, oh, I don't even know if I should talk to you. It's like, come on, I'm cool. I can be nice. I'm not, even though I'm, 191 centimeters tall, that scares some people. So, it's the notion that what you really need to do if you want to aspire to some level of achievement in your career, especially in the game industry, just focus on what you love. Do what you do best. Don't worry about getting the recognition. Although to Poornima's point, which is really important, and it is good advice, you do need to put yourself out there, because just like Amita, I also was a really intense introvert as a kid and even into my college years. And thankfully I too was able to get over that. I'm still an introvert though. I can just fake extroversion really, really well. And I love public speaking, whereas I used to be terrified of it. but you have to stretch yourself. You have to push, challenge yourself with opportunities that are a little bit outside your comfort zone, and that kind of expands your ability. And as you rise to each and every one of those challenges, people around you will notice, and they'll notice how hard you're working at it, and whether or not you actually succeed at whatever goal you had in mind. The point is that you're trying, and the point is it really is that notion that it's not the destination, it's the journey, and it's that ability to get through there. And so I'll drop another Mark Twain quote, just because obviously I'm a Mark Twain fan. But he said at one point, he said, "Comparison is the death of joy." And I love this quote because it really comes to the core of, I think, why a lot of people are held back from achieving as much as they could, because they're too busy looking what everyone else is doing and trying to think, well, maybe I can be like her or be like him or do what they can do. Don't worry about that. Just focus on what you can do. And if you do see someone around you who has abilities that you admire, then guess what? Go ask them to be a mentor and help you out, because that's a great opportunity to actually, find someone who can guide you forward.
I think I'm glad you brought up mentors, because here's my thinking on mentors. First of all, we all know achievements are not done alone. We all need a team here. But having a mentor is one thing, taking their advice and what you do with it is another. So I'm just going to jump in here, Amita. You told me that your father was a role model for you, and you also had a lot of great people at GE that gave you support. But it sounds to me like you were not recognized because it was given. You were recognized because you earned it. You worked hard. You have a good work ethic. You're a quick learner. And all of that has actually helped your confidence. So it sounds to me as if these mentors that you had in your life has actually really made a difference. So I'm just wondering if you had any advice here for other people with your experiences with mentors.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I've been really fortunate. I mean, from a young age, my father's definitely been an inspiration. I don't know anywhere along the way if I've had a formal mentor, so to speak, but kind of as I've gone through life and gone through my career, I've been fortunate to kind of encounter and build relationships with, leaders, and I've found that that's really helped me throughout my career. I'm first generation born and raised here in the States. My parents emigrated, so when I look at kind of my father's career and how he kind of established himself in this country, I mean, he benefited from the public education system here all the way through college, and was able to turn that into a wealth of opportunity for family. I mean, for me to have access to, top tier education, to see so much of the world. I mean, that is, he's been just a huge inspiration to me. And really, I think from an early age, sort of got me thinking about my career and what I wanted to do and what I could do and what was possible. I started my career at GE, and to your point, I think the culture at GE was certainly very, very merit based. So you felt like if you put your head down, if you worked hard, if you put in the time, you were rewarded for that. And so that's certainly how I was able to build relationships throughout my career. Is I wanted to go in and do a really good job, and I had career aspirations for myself. So I think that helps as well. Like if you sort of know where you want to go, and you're able to identify, people in your organization that, are in a seat that you would like to have, and you're able to sort of work with them or build relationships with them. I think that certainly, and those people changed as I went, through my career. And, I think we're talking about mentors, but in a lot of cases, those people, and I should say both men and women, in a lot of cases, those same people, were sponsors of mine in terms of, helping me to open doors. It's the reason I spent, I think all in all, about 10 years of my career at GE, which today I think probably sounds crazy. Why would anyone spend 10 years in one place? But I had, I felt like I was able to, get a lot of great experience and meet a lot of great people. And, I think it really helps to sort of take time out and think about, what it is that you want, where you want your career to go beyond what you're doing right now. And at least for me and experience, I found that, when you have that sense of purpose and you're able to sort of prove yourself and kind of earn your way, people tend to respond to that, because I think ultimately, for me as a leader now and having managed teams in the past, like, you want really highly motivated people on your team and you want really talented people on your team. And so I think when you can show that you have, something to offer, people will take an interest.
Well, thank you for your answer. We have about 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask a few more questions and then we'll open it up to the audience for some questions. But I want to hit on imposter syndrome. And I'm going to just put this out there. Who wants to jump in? Tell us what it is. If you want to tell us anything about the imposter syndrome. Okay, Kate, you're already laughing. Do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, I've given lectures about imposter syndrome, but basically it's that feeling where you're inadequate and you walk around, or you're sitting in your office or wherever, the people you're working with, and you feel like you're the only one who doesn't have the skills that everyone else around you has, or you don't have the knowledge that they have. And it's oftentimes it's seen as more of a women's issue, but it really isn't a women's issue. It is a human issue. It's something I've spoken with many people in the game industry and beyond about it. And it's basically a behavior that most people have at some point in their career, especially when you're starting out, because you're just, like fresh out of college, or, you're even, early in the years of your career, and you just feel like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but they seem to be paying me and everyone seems to be happy with what I'm doing. So I'll just keep doing whatever I'm doing. But it's very natural to doubt yourself, and it's very natural to not have that kind of initial confidence. But what imposter syndrome is when you don't get over it. It's when it kind of follows you constantly and you don't feel you can ever get out of that zone where you keep feeling like you have your skills or your knowledge or your abilities are inadequate in some way. And there's a lot of ways to try and get over this. And first of all, is recognizing that pretty much everybody around you is probably feeling the exact same way. And so if you open up and talk about it, that's one really great way to start dealing with it. And that tends to be why it's sometimes seen as a women's issue, because we talk about things more. We talk about things like imposter syndrome, whereas speaking with a lot of men who felt this way, they're like, it would be the death of them and in their career to actually talk about weakness. And for them to actually admit in their job that I don't know what I'm doing is really problematic for them. So there's a lot of ways to get over it. I already kind of mentioned that quote about comparison, which I think is, to me, one of the roots of why imposter syndrome is so pervasive, because we look at what other people are doing around us, and that kind of increases our feeling of inadequacy, because we see what they can do in Photoshop or their writing skills or whatever it might be. And it's just, we don't feel that our own skills are up to that level, even if we constantly get positive feedback from our managers and from people around us on what we're creating. And so part of getting over imposter syndrome is getting yourself to believe what other people are saying and stop listening to that negative voice in your head. And I know it's a lot easier said than done.
Well, good for you. It sounds like you've conquered it.
Yes.
But you worked on it. You made it, you were deliberate. I like that. Okay, so let's go into paying it forward. I think at this point in our careers, if we're not paying it forward, what are we doing and what is our purpose? I think it would be great to hear from Amita, since you're on the advisory board for an organization called Minds Matter. Can you tell us why you donate your time here and what you get out of it?
Yeah, it's very personal for me, and kind of goes back to my father and kind of the role he played as sort of a role model and inspiration for me. I mean, Minds Matter, for those of you that don't know, it's actually a national organization, a nonprofit, and they're really focused on preparing underserved high school students for success in college. So they work with, at least here in LA, local LA-based public high schools, and they design pretty intense curriculums throughout the academic year. So these students every Saturday participate for like a full work day in all of these workshops, sort of to help close skill gaps, and everything's really focused around college preparedness. And for me, it's incredibly important and rewarding just knowing sort of how I got to where I am, how I've been afforded the opportunities that I've had, both educationally and professionally. And it starts, really, really early on. And if, there's no one kind of looking out for you, if you don't have access or resources or the support to pursue, a college education, then I think things become really, really difficult from there on out. So the organization is just, from a mission perspective, is incredibly, just it really resonates with me in terms of, my background.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a really great organization. I encourage you guys to check it out.
Mind matters, right?
Minds matter. Yep.
Minds matter. We'll do it. All right. I was just thinking about career trajectory. Don't think we all got on a spaceship and went straight up, right? It's probably more like a roller coaster, which means that failure comes with success. And I just wanted to touch on this because I think failure is where growth comes. Somebody once said, it was actually Vicky Koff, who was the CTO, CIO of Warner Media, said, I don't want to think of it as failure. I want to think of it as learning. And I love that, on how do we learn our lessons and grow from it. So Poornima, you had mentioned that there are a few things you could talk about here. I was just wondering if you could take the floor for a minute.
Sure.
One more question, about 2 more minutes.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think failure definitely brings more lessons than success. And overcoming a failure is like a separate lesson of its own. I think failure, especially when you fail immediately, you don't want to try again. So the amount of sheer perseverance you need to actually overcome that and start again, it's commendable. But the good thing about that, it is exhaustive, but it's good that you're better prepared for it in the next journey. You can predict better, you can plan better, you see things clearer, you're much more smarter than the last person. And the thing is that with failures, there's only one step, right? Like you're only going to succeed or you're still going back to the same zone. There is no going further than failure. You're already there. And I think as a person who has gone through enough failures in my life, I think it's what made me who I am today. I have grown as a person, all the adversity that was faced. I think it has made me what I am, and I am able to share those mistakes with someone else so that they don't commit. I always tell them, commit new mistakes. Don't commit the same mistakes that I did. Learn from mine, and then make sure you create new things. And there's this one quote by Scott Adams that I go with, which is, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, and art is knowing which ones to keep. So I think that sums up failure and success for me.
Will you say that one more time? I'm writing it down.
Yeah, it's creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, and art is knowing which ones to keep.
Oh, I like that. That's really great. I remember when I was in kindergarten, I was so proud of this, I think it was a turkey that I colored. And I just felt like it was the best thing I'd ever done. And I brought it to the teacher and he said, oh, that's so interesting. You colored outside the lines. And I'm in kindergarten. I look at him and I go, isn't it my art? Right? Anyway, I'm going to close off this session, but we're going to ask some questions from the audience. But before I do, I want to ask all of you a question now that you've had time to think about it. We all have our superpowers in us, but if you could be, what would be your superhero power? Poornima, as long as you're on screen, what would be yours?
I think I would go with instant skill mastery. So I would like to just pick up any skill immediately and get better at it, because there's just so many awesome things to learn and pick up. So if I could have that superpower, it would be amazing.
Love it. Amita?
If I could never second guess myself, if I could get rid of self-doubt, I waste so much mental energy on that day in and day out. And I feel like it would be just a huge relief to be able to go through life and not just go through it with confidence and not question every step along the way, because generally everything works out. And as Poornima was saying, I mean, mistakes are mistakes and they can be good. And if I could get that mental energy back and use it for something more productive, I think that would be great.
That's a good one. Hadn't thought of it. All right, Kate.
I think for me, probably other than obvious ones like wanting to fly and things like that, I think the one that would be most useful is to be able to understand any language at all, even languages that don't exist anymore, to be able to read and write them, and also just to be able to know the intent of people. I think that it's kind of the communication superpower. I think it'd just be really cool to be able to do that, go anywhere in the world and just have a colloquial conversation as if you're a native speaker.
And animals too, right?
And animals, yes, to be able to understand the intent of animals. I don't expect them to talk to me like Dr. Doolittle, but I do. It would be cool to actually know whether or not that, the dog is going to attack you or want to come up and be your friend.
All right. Well, I'm going to close out here. I'm going to turn this over to Astrid to see if there's any questions from the audience.
There are plenty of questions, but I'm going to pick the one that I also wanted to ask. And somebody from the crowd asked it, and I love that question because I am very curious as being a big MMO and RPG fan game myself. So to all panelists, what are your top 3 favorite RPGs of all time?
Oh, goodness. I think I can answer this pretty well. I think for me, I'm not going to rank them. I'm just going to say them. I think Morrowind from the Elder Scrolls series is one of my absolute favorites. I love Elder Scrolls anyway, but Morrowind, that particular entry was one that I really, really enjoyed. What else? Another RPG, the Mass Effect series, which I worked on. I love that. I love the story. I love the gameplay was really cool. Other than that, I'm not sure. I'd have to think.
Questions, Astrid?
Well, this was for all 3. I don't know if Poornima or Amita wanted to.
I would be remiss if I didn't put a shameless plug in for the Diablo franchise. That's a Blizzard game, and they actually are bringing that RPG to mobile for the very first time. It's been a PC and console game up to this point. So for RPG or Diablo fans out there, look out for that coming soon to a mobile device near you.
Diablo is awesome. That would be on my list.
Poornima, do you
for
have
me
any?
too. Yes, I do. I think Neverwinter Nights is one of the RPGs that I really love. And of course, Diablo series. And I think there was this one game that's closer to me. It's an MMORPG called Ragnarok. I think that was the first one in India that was like a proper MMO that we had. So it's pretty close to my heart.
That's awesome. I'm disappointed I do not hear Red Dead Redemption in there, but you know what? We'll discuss.
There's too many. There's too many.
Awesome. Well, I think I don't know if I have time to ask another question, Debbie.
Sure, go ahead. Maybe just one.
There is more, always more. So how do you create empathy with your customers / gamers in this case? And could you elaborate on AI, ML, and other technologies that gaming companies leverage? Anyone can answer that question too.
Well, I'll answer it quickly from my perspective. I mean, the culturalization work that I've been doing for all this time is basically helping game developers adapt their game content for cultures around the world. And a lot of that does involve a certain level of empathy and trying to understand your game's creative vision from the perspective of another culture and of another worldview. And so trying to get the game developer to stand in someone else's shoes, even for a moment, to understand, like, is this narrative going to be understood? Is it something that's going to create the emotional connection that you intend it to create? I do think, because when a game is designed very well, when the narrative design is excellent, that empathy and emotion is going to connect all human beings. It's going to transcend the culture. But sometimes it just depends on what approach they're doing. It depends on the game genre. It depends on all kinds of factors. And so that's what I try and help them understand and try and help them adapt that. And it's not easy to do. too, because, if you come from Western Europe or North America or somewhere like that, and you don't have that understanding of how empathy and how emotions are expressed in different cultures, then that amazing creative vision you have just may not connect with some people. So you have to work at it, and you have to do your research and talk to people from those other places.
Awesome. Well, thank you for answering this question. I know we are out of time. We have 1 minute left. So I'm going to let Sumit take over and close the webinar.
Thank you, Sid and everybody. There's only one person who deserves to close this webinar, the person who curated and created this webinar, Ashwini.
Thank you so much, Sumit. Well, wow, after such powerful words that have been spoken, I better not say anything. Let this just sink in. Game interaction, emotions, courage, driving positive changes around us in countless ways. Thanks again, our astounding panelists. There wasn't a single moment where we weren't fascinated by your experiences and personal stories. Thank you for taking us into the magical gaming world revolving around culture, empathy, and superpowers. I am personally going to strive to learn more about gaming with the help of wonderful leaders like yourselves. A special thanks to all the attendees for joining in and inspiring us to keep going on with these sessions. Hope you enjoyed this impactful gaming ride. We promise to be back with yet another exciting session. Do write to us if you wish to have cover any other specific topic. Hope you all had a fun Halloween, Karwa Chauth, Poornima, and hope you all have a great Diwali and Thanksgiving ahead. See you soon with yet another exciting session. Till then, stay tuned. Signing off on behalf of Team Cable, Media and Entertainment, Ashwini Chaubey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.